Hi, and welcome to CryptoBiography. I'm your host, Brandon Starr, and this is episode 194, and it's a story called Fight or Flight. And here we go. It'll be fun, he promised. No, it's dangerous, she replied. Not for me, he said. Jack was pulling Amy along by the arm, away from the family camp and towards the lake, specifically along the path that led to some intimidatingly high cliffs above the lake. The sun had gone down, and they had slipped away from the bonfire, which was the big activity at the camp for the night. Both of them had hearts that were racing. It was Amy's first boyfriend, or so she thought of him, though she knew they lived too far away from each other to think of it lasting beyond the camp. Jack had had a girlfriend already last year at school. Amy tried not to think about that too much, or whether he was likely to resume his relationship with her next school year. She tried to live in the moment. She just found it difficult. But living in the moment was now simple, because she was a little scared and excited. "What do you mean?" she asked. "You'll see," he replied. He kept ahead of her on the path, pulling her along. It was quite dark among the trees, but the path was smooth enough that as long as she picked up her feet, she wouldn't trip. Finally, they got to the opening. The lake was in front of them, laid out, smooth with the gentle wind. The half-moon was just high up enough to give a few sparkles to the dark water. They slowed down, but Jack was still pulling Amy towards the cliff top. She started to pull back. "I don't like heights," she said. "No further, please." He let go, but continued close to the edge. "Don't, Jack. It's not safe," Amy said. She could hear a tone creeping into her voice. She was almost begging. "People have hurt themselves jumping into the water from here." "Others did just fine," he said. "Oh, no," Amy said. "Don't try it. It's dark. If you're hurt, it will take me forever to bring help." "Then I'd better not get hurt," Jack said. He took another step towards the edge. He was only a couple of steps away now. Despite her fears, Amy found herself creeping back towards him, as though she might try to grab him if he tried to jump. "Please don't try," she said. "I told you I'll be fine," he said. "This can't possibly hurt me." "You can't know that," she choked. "Please, I'm scared." The last word came out in a harsh whisper. She was shocked and a little upset when Jack laughed. "You'll see," he said, taking a step backward without even looking behind him. "Stop!" she yelled. "Amy," he said, and stood very still. She stopped too. "Maybe I took this a little too far, but I want you to understand me. I cannot be hurt here." "I don't know what that means," Amy said. She was starting to choke up. "Then I'll show you," he said, and took another step back. His heels were at the edge of the cliff. "Wait," she said, but he took another step off. He did not fall. He walked straight out into the air. Amy shook her head as though clearing it following a bump. But no, Jack was just standing there in the open air. "What?" Amy asked. "Do you have a glass floor there or something?" In reply, Jack simply sank down below the cliff, right out of sight. She gasped and, despite her fear, took a couple of steps forward. He reappeared, rising level with the cliff, then rose still more, up above her head, then quite a ways further. Then he turned and returned to the cliff. "You can fly?" Amy asked. "I can," Jack said, smiling. "I haven't told many people, so please, will you keep this between us?" "Who would believe me?" Amy said. "Step forward," he said. "Why?" "I think I can fly us both," he said. "Are you sure?" "No," he admitted. "I've never tried before. But you're a good deal lighter than I am. I'm not super strong or anything. I'm not a comic book hero." "You sure?" Amy blurted. He barked a single laugh, then went towards her instead. "I'm sure. Let's start away from the cliff. No need to be so dramatic." "Now you tell me," Amy said. They moved several paces away from the edge. "How do we do this?" Amy asked. "Good question. I don't think it'll be safe for you to try to dangle from my hands, and I'm not sure climbing on top of my shoulders is wise. I don't know what would happen if the center of mass moved up that high. We might flip over, then you'd just fall." "Yeah, let's not do that," Amy agreed wryly. "Let me hold you like an old-fashioned bride being brought across the threshold," he suggested. "Let's try that on the ground first," she said. She hopped up, and he grabbed her and cradled her in his arms. It wasn't easy, but he managed it. Okay, let's try flying, he said. He focused, and they floated up off the ground. Not more than a couple of feet, please, Amy said, until we know we can be safe. I'm thinking some sort of special harness would be a good idea, Jack said, looking into the distance, thinking. Amy looked at him briefly, but she was too intent on watching their height above the ground to give it more than a moment. That would let me carry you more easily and also more safely. We could figure one out that, even if we did turn over, you would still be attached to me. Yes, she agreed, but her thoughts were on the ground, which was now almost 5 feet below Jack. Can you bring us a bit lower? I'm scared. Of course, Jack replied. He obliged until they were just a couple of feet above the grass. It still seemed high to Amy, who wasn't terribly tall. She'd been on ladders a few times, as few as could not be avoided, and this seemed even less safe, though she trusted Jack. They scooted along the ground, not too fast, but the feeling was still thrilling to Amy. After a while, she stopped looking at the grass and the trees sliding past and looked into Jack's eyes. How? She asked. Jack just puffed out a single laugh. I don't know. Well, when did you first fly? About a year ago. I tripped on the stairs, but instead of falling and hurting myself, I just kind of floated down. Well, fortunately, no one was around to see it. After that, I practiced falling and then not landing at first, and then being able to float up and down at will, and finally being able to float around wherever I liked. Unfortunately, I'm no Superman. I'm no stronger than I was before, which is why I'm going to let you down now. He floated back to the ground and set her on her feet. A shot rang out. Jack fell to the ground. Jack! Amy screamed. She looked around to see who shot him, but could see no one. She pulled out her phone and called for emergency help. Her hands were already shaking from fear and adrenaline, but soon an ambulance was on its way. She hovered over Jack's fallen body, not sure what to do, not sure if she would be attacked next. Jack made it to the hospital. He'd been shot through the lung, and there was a fair bit of blood loss, but he pulled through. There was a thorough police investigation that went almost nowhere. No suspect was found. Amy did not tell the police about Jack flying, but she told me. She wouldn't have. I'm a stranger, and Jack had asked her not to tell. But of course, I already knew. Jack had not been all that careful, and though his powers had only been around a short time, he had come to our attention. We'd been keeping tabs on him, but only in a general sense. We had not yet approached him, since he's not yet an adult. Besides, this seems to be a new phenomenon. A few imps have been attacked when others discovered their powers, but these tend to be family members or friends who are deeply religious and see their powers as evidence of devils or spirits. Less commonly, a friend or relation attacks out of envy or spite, thinking that the imp has secrets to superpowers that they are keeping from them. But no, this is something new. I had a forensic expert investigate after the police, and we found the nest where the attacker shot Jack with some sort of rifle. We also determined that the shooter likely parked and came from the public forest parking some mile away from the family camp. We're working on the theory that this person knew about Jack and had decided to kill him when he was going to be in the forest. This meant that he also knew about Jack's family taking him to family camp. Because of this, it is likely that Jack is still in danger. We cannot intervene directly, but we've given our findings to both his family and his local police, who say they will keep an eye out. That is all we can do for now. It is unlikely, but possible, that Amy or Jack will make Jack's powers public. Time will tell. We will keep tabs on him, and when he is of age, we'll make a determination whether to announce ourselves to him. End of report. And that's the end of the story for today. Obviously, this is a one-parter, and it is in the Connections continuity. I hope you enjoyed it, and, get a little wrinkle in the overall overarching, arc of the world of the Connections continuity. So hope you enjoyed it. If you have any comments or questions about this episode or previous episodes, cryptobiography@gmail.com, or hit us up on Facebook or Twitter. And thanks for listening. Words and music, copyright 2021, CryptoBiography LLC, all rights reserved. Characters and events are fictional, fictionalized, or satirical.